Okay, I guess I'm recording now. Okay, so this meeting is not really, it's not going to be a traditional um, me talk, you listen type thing. It just, at any time, if you feel like you have something to say on this, uh, on a slide that we're talking on, just like key up your mic and just, say something. Because I haven't taken the DAT yet. I've researched the DAT, but I know there's a lot of people in the club that have already taken the DAT and, have some advice to give and, that could help some other people. So, if at any point, you feel like you know something, just uh, let it be known. So, mhm. So there's many different sections to it. You gotta pace yourself because it's a pretty long exam. It's gonna take all day to do it. So you have the four sections that we just looked at. I'm not really familiar with the optional surveys. I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard though. So for the uh, natural sciences, yeah. So it's the biology, OChem, and Gen Chem. You have 90 minutes for 100 questions, 40 questions, or 40 for general biology. Um, yeah, gotta pace yourself. Let's see. And this is just an example question for the for uh, biology. Another example question for biology. My little sister helped put these slides together, so these are um, slides that she thought were important to, or that were representative of what it'd be like on the actual exam. And this goes all the way back to Gen Chem stuff, so it's basic, but you still got to know it. All right, so the natural sciences, uh, the distribution of all the sections. Uh, well, which one? I've heard that the phylogeny is on there and annoying. Uh, I guess it's the evolution, ecology, and behavior section. Yeah, I mean, it's with chemistry. It's really just a little bit of everything. There's OChem, but that was still encompassed in this with the redox. This is just all of OChem, or this is just OChem. That's all of chemistry. So quantitative reasoning, just basic math and problem solving. The best way to train for this is just DAT boot camp and just go through the programs that they have for it. It's not super intense, but there's just little tricky things that you just got to keep up with. So we got the perceptual ability test and the reading comprehension test. The reading comprehension test actually can be, it's a lot of people's highest scoring section, but it can also be a little tricky because um, I've heard some say it's really easy, but then it was like one of the easiest sections, but then when they come back, it's actually close to one of the lowest scoring sections. So apertures, keyholes. Okay, so keyholes are like you'll look at like a 3D object on the page, and then you'll look at a keyhole, and then you'll have to determine in what orientation did that object pass through that keyhole. And it sort of sounds simple, but some of these objects that they have are really complex and tricky. So I mean, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes easier. But they're not initially um, easy. So view recognition. So you'll look at an object and then you'll have to predict, you look at an object from an angle and then have to predict how it look from another angle. Angle discrimination is you basically see like 4 angles or something that are like 15 degrees, 17 degrees, 20 degrees, and 13 degrees, and you have to put them in order. Some of them can get sort of difficult, but you just sort of got to go with your gut on them. Paper folding, pretty self-explanatory. Cube counting, I'm not familiar with this one. And then 3D form development. From the quantitative reasoning section. So this is the basic algebra, where 10 is equal to, well, see, it takes a second to think this through, but the answer is 5xy. And here's the top view. So this is, you see a view, one of these views, then you have to predict how the other view would look based on these two. Whether, because there's clearly no triangle in these, but it could have been this one. It's just a triangle from the side. And yeah, you just have to run through a bunch of these to actually get the gist of it. Okay, so this is pattern folding. So it shows you the line that's going to fold across. So this folds over to here, and then that piece would fold over to here, and then along this axis right here, this corner would fold around to there, and then I'm not actually sure how those little half circles evolve, but derive the answer from these 4 slides up here. And here's the angles. I mean, it doesn't give you the numbers, but you just have to sort which ones are the smallest to largest, where 1 sort of obvious is the largest, but between 3 and 4 it can get a little tricky. This is the key. So you look at this key in a certain orientation, you have to take note of all the grooves that are right here and how they go around, and you have to pick a keyway. Like this one obviously can't fit because it doesn't have that block coming out right there. But, and there's just like little factors, like this has concave, this is convex right here. And just got to pay attention to every little curve on there. All right, here's cubes, the cube stacking. You just got to count them. Just got to be visually aware of what you're looking at. You can't go too quick over these because you can easily overlook one section of this type of question. And finally, pattern folding. So this object will all fold into itself, and it's up to you to figure out the pattern in which this makes. So one section of this is going to be like a base, and then the other sections fold up like around it to form like this is the base right here. This section folds up, folds in, this folds. I can't do it with the mouse really, but yeah, you can see how they. And again, really, I mean, you can get these intuitively, but it just takes a little bit of time to really these down. Okay, so this is just some data on DAT scores, just what to expect really, and what a lot of schools expect from your scores. I mean, the scores range from, I think, 14 to 30. But it's sort of like the ACT, where if you miss like one question, it knocks you down like 1 point. But if you miss 2 questions, it knocks you down like. But if you miss like 3 questions, it only knocks you down 2 points. And so the more it's a lot easier to get as you go down. You just get knocked off heavily in the beginning, and then it's sort of like there's a heavy middle percentage from like 17 to 20. Because you have to miss a lot as you go further down. You have to miss a lot more to get knocked down another point. And this is a course for dental schools and what they generally accept. So to actually take the DAT, you need to make an account with the ADA and obtain a dent pin. And then you can actually plan to take the exam. A lot of people have had their exams because of COVID pushed back and canceled like up to like 3 to 5 times, which is pretty ridiculous, and it can actually ruin a decent bit of people's odds of getting into schools. And some schools have actually just like done away with the DAT this year and are relying on other factors to let kids in, but it's not it's it comes a little sketchy at that point because they start looking at a lot more factors, a lot more heavily. But it's good to schedule it out like probably 4 to 6 months out, just to know when you're taking it. Be especially aware of when like you start to apply to schools. It opens up May, June, July. Yeah, May. No, June, May or June-ish. So you want to take it before then. So that means you probably want to start scheduling it around now, too, because I'm starting to study for it in December to take it in March, and then I'll be ready for the application cycle in May, June. And also when you're applying, you also want to apply as early as possible because it's like a free advantage. If they're just going to always look at the next kid in line, and if you're not, the earlier you apply, the better that they're going to look at you versus some other person with the exact same stats. So it's like a free advantage. You always want to apply as early as possible. So if you take the exam, you're not satisfied with your score, you gotta wait 90 more days. That's just what it is. You can't just hammer it out, which basically is another study cycle. So I mean, everybody does it a little bit differently, but you can rebuy the, whatever program you like. DAT boot camp is it's a little over 2 months, closer to 3, really. So it is another time, but it's again expensive to just keep taking it over and over, and that's sort of part of why they make it so expensive, is so you take it seriously the first time. And that's what a lot of kids do. Refunds not allowed, no reason, or no, for any reason. It just makes it easier on them. Yeah, and you can just get through. You have to go to ADA and figure out where the DAT is offered and at what times. It's not just like any time of the week. And plus, I mean, you have to plan it several months in advance. And right now, I believe the testing sites and the dates are a little stacked right now because so many kids have gotten pushed off throughout the earlier parts of this year because of COVID. So if you're looking to take it in, December, December's too late. So I mean, probably January, February. If you weren't looking to take it then, you definitely need to apply like close to now. So yeah. Okay, so preparing for the DAT. That that's not our code right now. I have the code somewhere in my Gmail, but we got in contact with DAT Bootcamp, and they're offering us the same discount as we got with when Caroline was the president of the pre-dental club. So it just gives you $70 off of the program, which it's just nice to have that little bit off. And my little sister's taken the DAT boot camp, and that's she 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 got a lot out of it. She really we would recommend that one for everyone. So we contacted them and got the $70 off if you just use the product code, which I am in the process of trying to find that DAT code because I didn't realize that this one wasn't updated. Let's see. DAT comes with something. Okay. Okay, so there's a extra link. Change that to Kennesaw's UPDC 20. So that's our code. It's updated and fixed now. But yeah, there's a lot of options. Tons of guides, YouTube videos, stuff like that to see what other people have done to study for the DAT. And we have a couple members of our own talking at the end of this, or whatever they want, about their experience with the DAT and what they used and what they felt helped them succeed the best. So Kaplan, Chad's videos, DAT Destroyer, DAT Bootcamp, Crack the DAT. Just there's a lot of different places you can look for help on that. So timing, yeah, plan for 3 months. You want to have a general idea of what you're what you're planning on doing. If you want to take it twice, that boat may have already sailed before right before the opening. I mean, you could take it. You could if you signed up right now, you could take it again. Like as the application cycle is open, but that's tight. But I mean, how you gonna know you want to take it again? If you haven't even signed up yet. So yeah, you want to plan for 3 months ahead. Yeah, June 1st. So June 1st. So complete early in the process because you always want to give yourself that June 1st advantage. Because I mean, with things so tight, I mean, you want to give yourself every advantage possible. And applying, putting everything in on June 1st. At least the general application supplementals come out later. That's very useful. So scores are at least 3-4 weeks after. And again, fees are not refundable or transferable. And it's a test you got to take seriously. I mean, just like the ACT. Anything you think about the SAT, ACT, it's just like that. It's expensive. It takes a lot to study for. It takes a lot of mental effort, and you want to do it right the first time. So, but I mean, if you don't do it right the first time, then there's always a second time and stuff like that. But the fees are high, so it's always recommended that you put in the most the first time so you don't have to do it an extra time. But it's not a problem if you have to do an extra time. I mean, some things just don't line up right and it just you don't that one day may not be the best for you and you just gotta take it in. But these are the fees and they're not refundable. And stay confident. Second guessing yourself, not really committing to the test will lead you guys to not get the scores you're wanting because I mean you gotta have a clear head going into it and like anxieties and stuff like that it'll eat away at your ability to think clearly and whatnot. So it's just good to stay calm during that day. Just take it easy, I mean make sure your prep work just fine and when the day comes, make sure you get a good night's rest and everything like that. Don't like binge an all-nighter because that'll leave you get lower test scores than if you didn't study at all. So just yeah. And now we will switch it over to Harrison Smith, who already took the DAT and we're gonna talk about what he did.
Hey, so that's me. Um, so I used the Kaplan course to. Wait one sec. I think I'm getting a little feedback on Nathan. I'm gonna just mute him. Okay. All right. So I took the Kaplan course. That's a really expensive one. So if you don't have the money for that, there are a lot of different resources out there. Most of them you have to pay money for, but there are some that have like videos and practices that you can do. If you can get your hands on like a Kaplan book or something like that, that's also a very good choice. Because there are a lot of different techniques, little like what is it? What is it? Hints that can like get you closer to the answer because they're a lot of times the test makers for the DAT want you to think a certain way. So like the Kaplan courses and like boot camp, they can provide that sort of way of thinking. So that can be incredibly helpful going into it. And then timing. So when I took the exam, it was in August. I tried to get one in May, but unfortunately, because of COVID, it was all pushed back, and so the earliest I could get it was August 23rd. So that's when I applied, right after I submitted, um, right after I took the DAT. So when I took it, it was the summer after my junior year. So some people take it earlier. I don't recommend really taking it later unless you're trying to do like a gap year or something like that. Um, but I took it when I did because I had a lot of basis for the knowledge of the DAT because I took a lot of um, let's see, a lot of like the biochem. There's not a whole lot of biochem, but there are some things on there that can be really beneficial if you've taken biochem. And I unfortunately I didn't take human phys, but I kind of wish I had because there were a lot of things on there that could have helped my score if I had taken human phys. And so I recommend right after your junior year if you can. If you want to take it earlier, you can, but you may not have the basis and it might be hard. Um, so there are different sections in it, and so for a lot of them, it's just you need to do as many practice problems as possible. That's the real key, I think. When I was doing all the practices, just especially with perception. I know perception and math. The more you do of them, the more comfortable you get, and you'll just slowly see your scores increase on like practice exams or like questions when you do more and more practice. So just as many practices as you can with as many questions as you can. That's what I highly recommend. And then confidence. So actually going into the exam, I was I personally uh, like would stop and take just 10 seconds to just breathe on certain sections because sometimes it'd be overwhelming and maybe you get like two questions in a row that you just don't quite understand, which is okay because a lot of times in say like the science section you'll find that there's an organic question that you just don't understand, and then you'll say okay, that's all right, I'm going to go back and go through all of my biology and gen chem again and come back to it and maybe I'll understand it better. And that happened to me on the exam where I saw a question I didn't understand. I said okay, that's all right, and I just remained confident, remained cool. I then went back to another section, looked through it, made sure everything was good, came back to the question, and I reread it, and it made perfect sense. So a lot of times you can get in your own head, and if you have, which hopefully, if you've practiced enough, you'll have that 10 seconds every now and again just to say, I'm okay, and just focus on breathing. So yeah, that's what I recommend. If you have any other questions, you can always reach out to me, DM me on GroupMe or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and should we move through these slides as well, or
Yeah, you
this is
can.
this is yeah, this is Bryce. Go for it, Bryce.
Okay. Hey, what's up, you guys? So I actually took the DAT twice. I took it my first time back last summer, I believe in June. At this time, I kind of just was finishing up OChem 2, and I had only biology and genetics really kind of under my belt. The next fall and then that next spring, which is this spring, I kind of took more of my upper level bios. But the study materials I used for the first time taking it was DET boot camp and Cliff's AP biology. I definitely recommend out of both of those, at least for the biology section, definitely DAT boot camp. But I studied while taking kind of a full load of classes, so I feel like that was kind of where I was struggling with. It was just a lot to be studying for classes, and also studying for the DAT. I personally wouldn't recommend doing that. If you did it, I would take a lower class load, maybe like 6 or 8 credits. But I also known people who can take a full load and do amazing on the DAT. So you really just have to figure out what works best for you. At the end of the day, you want the score that is as competitive as possible, that you can get, and so you want to make sure you are giving your studying the attention it deserves, and the test, and taking the test seriously. You really more than once, to be honest, because it's expensive to be taking it twice or 3 times or any other amount of time. So I definitely recommend being super prepared for the first time to take the test. I also understand that the first time is you're kind of getting used to it, and you may not be familiar, but I believe you study and you use the right materials, you should be fine. I also felt like I spent too much time on resources that weren't helping. I watched a lot of YouTube videos and stuff to figure out what students were using, and so my mind was so focused on, okay, using a certain amount of materials, but I wasn't really focusing on DAT bootcamp. I bought bootcamp, but I used Cliff's AP Bio. I was watching YouTube videos and even kind of looked at a destroyer book, but I just felt like I was spending too much time on resources that I felt like weren't helping, and I wasn't using boot camp to actually see how I was doing throughout the studying process. And I also didn't emphasize on my weak areas. I knew the areas I wanted to study the most were math and general chemistry and biology. And so the next time I used DAT boot camp only, and I studied this past summer, studied around 6 to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. You can go to that next slide, Nathan, if you want to. And this was kind of just my schedule throughout the summer. I wasn't taking any courses really, except for a couple of onlines, and I didn't stick to the 6 to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, all the way through. I mean, it was just a lot, I felt like, but I definitely feel like you should have a set amount of time you want to study throughout the week. And I would do QR practice and reading comprehension in the afternoon, and I did sciences in the morning. And I definitely made sure I focused on my weak areas. I started studying QR heavily, just doing a lot of practice questions. And you may hear a lot of people say that boot camp doesn't prepare you for the QR section. My experience was just a little bit different. I feel like boot camp did prepare me for the QR section. Just make sure you watch all the videos that they offer, and then do all the practice questions that they give you, and not just do them, but make sure you go over each and every question. Even if you get it right, you'll start to notice a pattern in the type of questions that they ask you, especially when you get to like probability, and they're asking card questions and stuff like that. You'll start to see a pattern, and you'll start to get it eventually, and these questions will show up later on the actual test, and it'll make the QR section a lot more smoother, I feel like. um, and so the next slide you can go to, I said boot camp versus the DAT. So when I got to the testing center, I took it in Smyrna, Georgia, I believe, and I took it on the exact date was September 23rd. It was scheduled for the 12th, but I moved it back 2 weeks because some stuff was going on. But I had gone to the test center, they checked me in. And one thing I noticed that was different than the last time I took it is on the PAT section for the keyholes, they gave me graph paper to actually do the not the keyhole question, but the hole punch questions. They gave me like this laminated graph paper for scratch paper, and that made it much easier to do that section of the PAT. But this time around, they didn't give me that. They just gave me these yellow pieces of scratch paper with nothing on it. And so I basically had to make my own graph lines. And that kind of stressed me out a little bit on that section. That's why I said it was kind of the most difficult section for me. Out of all the sections on the DAT compared to boot camp, PAT was definitely harder. I felt like the other 5 sections were easier. Not a whole lot easier for each of them, but I do believe they were easier. And PAT was clearly harder. Um, so yeah, most of the sections were easier than boot camp's test. This isn't the same for everybody. Everybody's going to have probably a different experience, but you will hear most people say that, yeah, the boot camp definitely was harder and it probably prepared you better for the test with their questions. But I will say, even with that, boot camp's questions are very similar to the questions asked on the DAT, just the format of how they ask the question, especially with general chemistry. I know general chemistry is like they don't provide a calculator, but the answers are kind of like in the format of the formula. Most times, when it's difficult math involved, so they'll give you that formula on boot camp tests. If you take the test, you'll also see those types of answers show up on the DAT. And just my advice, I would say stick with a resource. If you have multiple resources, figure out which one is working best for you, that you feel like you're getting the most out of, and definitely stick with it so you can track your progress and see that you're actually doing well. Also, take plenty of practice tests. Like Harrison said, looking at as many practice questions as you can is probably the most important part of the studying process. Just getting familiar with the types of questions they're going to be asking, and also practicing your pacing throughout the test will also be super helpful. And for biology is definitely one I want to stress because this is probably the most uh, crazy section. You have all these subjects and just 40 questions. They could ask you anything. I definitely recommend the condensed 100-page notes. I study those, and I just basically looked at them almost every day. I would go back over the 100 pages multiple times, and I also studied Anki note cards. If you don't know what that is, it's like a little software thing you can download on your computer. It's free, and they basically, well, it's on boot camp. They give you the sets for the note cards, and you just have to download Anki and download the Quizlet sets they have, and it'll show you you can look up YouTube videos on how to put them in there. I'm not exactly remember how you put the note cards in there, but you download them on your computer and you put them in the software. But yeah, those are super helpful because they basically track the number of cards you studied, and it ends up setting it up to where you look at that same card 3 days from that day or 5 days or whatever. And I also want to say, just take care of yourself. This is a long process, and I definitely got tired of studying after a while. So I definitely said take care of yourself and take breaks if you need it. Don't overwork yourself, and just have confidence when you go in for the test. Just have confidence in the fact that you studied and you gave it your all, and just be ready for it when that day comes. So that's all I have basically. If you have any questions, you can also just DM me or group me or something. But yeah.
Whoops, I missed that last slide change, but
Oh, you're
um,
good.
uh, yeah. So that's just about it. Thank you, Harrison, for contributing, and Bryce as well. Again, I haven't taken the DAT yet, so I just read online at what other people have said. So it's invaluable having people who have actually taken it and you know willing to share that advice. Thank you, guys.
No problem.
So I guess I will end the recording now. Meeting's basically officially over. If you have any questions, stick around, ask, somebody will be here to answer. And alrighty, thanks everyone.